Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Pro Live Media Deals event. I'm Tim Baysinger, Media Deals reporter for Axios Pro. For everyone that's watching online, please join the conversation today on Twitter with our handle at Axios Pro or our hashtag Axios Pro. Over the next 30 minutes, I will be joined by Linda Yaccarino and some Axios Pro colleagues. During this Pro Live media event, we will reflect on the most tumultuous year for media and entertainment in recent memory and help you understand what matters for the rest of 2022 and beyond. So as I said before, today's guest is the chairman of Global Advertising and Partnerships at NBCUniversal, Linda Yaccarino. Linda, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Tim. It's very exciting, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
All right, so let's get started with everyone's favorite topic in media these days, streaming. There's been a lot of noise in the streaming industry over the past few months, especially as Netflix's earnings were obviously not what they wanted it to be, and it just seems that investor confidence has kind of seemed to wane a little bit in thinking about sort of this long-term viability of streaming. But with that being said, you guys have Peacock. You launched it in 2020, so now that you're almost 2 years into it, why are you still so bullish about Peacock?
Well, I love the question, and certainly at the beginning of your question when you said everyone's favorite topic lately, streaming. It certainly continues to be a favorite topic to talk about here, because when you think about it, you said something really important to point out, is that we launched Peacock in 2020. It is barely 2 years old. And when you think about it, Netflix, how old it is, right? And then how old, even older, Hulu is. So many companies have been in streaming decided to chase and be Netflix for the last 10 years. That was never the business case at Peacock. And we always thought if we knew very specifically that where the consumer behavior was going towards streaming, and if we could replicate the strength and dominance of broadcast, but in a streaming environment with differentiators, limited amount of commercials that respected the viewing experience, and make those commercials the right commercials. If you marry them with the tremendous vault of content at NBCUniversal and some other partners that we launched Peacock with, that it would be an absolutely terrific value exchange to the consumer. Great product, incredible amounts of content for a very reasonable price. And that's why we continue to be excited about Peacock, because the momentum has been incredible because of that agreement with our consumer. And we tease around here a lot that we should have named Peacock Rocket Ship because of the way it's been taken off. And as much as you don't want to walk around and say, gee, we were right, but our hunch about an affordable product with the right amount of commercials married with great content really does prove the point that the Netflix momentum was only going to last so long. And now they have a complex problem on their hands. So it's one thing that continues to drive us for Peacock, because it's the kind of perfect example of what we do, which is sitting at the intersection of content, technology, and consumer experience here. So we're really excited about the future.
Mm-hmm. And one of the ways Peacock is differentiated, not just having advertising, but you have a free tier, which a lot of other streaming services don't have, although it seems some are realizing maybe we should. I was at the Milken Institute conference yesterday, and Tanya Giles from Paramount, she mentioned, because they have Pluto, she was like, free is so overlooked, don't underestimate free. And so, are some of these other services that don't have a free tier, that, or even ones that are trying to go pure play subscription and not really worry about advertising too much, are they missing something?
Well, that was the original business case here, which is now, if Peacock is 2 years old, obviously we were planning and working on it for probably 2 or 3 years prior to that. So our hunch is turning out to play out to be what we expected, right? So that and I don't know if you attended, but when we did our first investor day for Peacock, the whole theme or tagline of that day was, the best thing in life is free, right? So the best things in life are free. So when you think about that, it was really based on that premise. And to the woman from Paramount's point, don't overlook free. I think really how I would say it is don't underestimate the sophistication and knowledge of the consumer who knows there's a value exchange for the content or the experiences they're receiving and the price they have to pay for it. And when we think about subscription in the macro, I think people in the media industry only look at it, how many streaming services are going to work, and they don't think about the share of wallet that includes subscription for many, many other things, from news to health to music. And there's only so much share of wallet you could have. And think about it, in a world that we're unfortunately living in inflation, and we fear that that might evolve into recession, free sounds pretty good, or affordable price like Peacock at $4.99 in exchange for the right amount of ads sounds like it will continue that momentum.
Yeah, and you mentioned, partner, or you mentioned, all the other services that people pay for that are not just, content like
Yes.
music and all the other stuff. And it brings me to another point with you guys, is that you have all these partnerships with kind of people outside the NBCUniversal ecosystem, TikTok with the Olympics, and YouTube, and obviously you just announced a partnership with Twitter. But at the same time, those are kind of services that in some ways are competing for attention with Peacock, with your linear TV channels. So how do you look at working with these companies? Are they sort of competitors? Are they like frenemies? Like, how do you look at that?
Well, I have to say it's a really great and very astute question. But the reason that we are quite uniquely very aggressive about these partnerships is because if you look at the consumer behavior, the consumer is going to interact with our content on all those distribution platforms. So whether it's Twitter, Meta, Google, via Facebook, YouTube, right? The consumer is interacting with our content in those spaces. And they're not worrying about where they get that content from. They just want to get like if you use Bravo, for example, the Real Housewives audience is insatiable. And they're going to follow them on TikTok, on Twitter to hear what they have to say, on Bravo, and on Peacock. So it's always been our strategy to make sure that we keep our content, right, aggressively close to us and do partnership deals wherever our content shows up, because that's the consumer we want. And when you marry those two things together, it enables me to have a great conversation with my clients at Procter & Gamble or Toyota or Target, because we are able to represent a consumer experience with our content, not just through screens that NBC Universal may own holistically, but we have partnership deals with them to benefit the consumer. And it's been really, really interesting as you make sure our content is distributed on every platform, including big things like the Olympics. It has made an incredible difference in our relationship with consumers. They know, they're aware.
Yeah, and I want to move to one of the main reasons why we wanted to have you for our May event was that obviously the upfront is kicking into high gear, and I'm sure you're loving the fact that it's back to being in person. Not doing it virtually anymore the last couple of years. Although I will still be virtually attending from Los Angeles, but that's just what I'm used to.
We'd be happy to have you on.
Even pre-pandemic, I was watching from Los Angeles. What the interesting part about you guys this year is that, NBCU has been one of the most aggressive companies in terms of trying to change and kind of modernize how TV, or we'll say content viewership, is, kind of measured these days. Obviously, you guys have partnerships with, iSpot, and I know you announced the whole list of other ad tech vendors that you're working with at your developer conference. I believe that was in April. As the upfront season kind of gets going, as the talks with ad buyers kind of get going, how are all these partnerships you've kind of made with all these measurement companies, how is that going to factor in to how you're going to talk to ad buyers this year?
Well, first of all, it's going to impact it a great deal. And I do want to take a second and address the reunion of sorts that we'll have on May 16th at Radio City, because our show, our communication, is going to be a celebration of the amount of content, the accomplishment, those partnerships, the tentacles of Comcast, NBC Universal, and Sky that reach so far and wide globally on the backs of this great content that we have. So it is going to be a celebration, and we are thrilled that it is going to be in person, or that will offer this in-person option, because there is no surrogate for that human relationship and experience, and it's in the business that we're in, right? So we are excited that we'll be able to communicate that emotion that our content creates in person at that event. And that being said, I think the changes that you'll hear about and see about during the upfront, whether it's at the show or during the conversations, is going to talk a lot more about the change in the consumer experience. And the change in the consumer experience requires measurement, to answer your question specifically, to reflect an ability to capture how consumers interact with all of our premium content in real time. And unfortunately today, as the consumer has moved at lightning speed across platforms, across screens, across distribution vehicles, measurement hasn't been able to keep up. And that's why we widened our aperture and invited a lot of measurement companies in, so we could speak specifically to clients who have many different KPIs today. It might be, how do I get the most people in a showroom to test drive a car? Or it might be, how many people can I get to sign up for a particular subscription or promotional period for an advertiser? And that has nothing to do with a GRP. So different consumer behavior has created the need for a variety of KPIs that advertisers are interested in having us guarantee their deals on, and we're happy to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the last question I will ask before we go to some of our audience questions is about the upfront. I mean, I've been doing this job for about 11, 12 years, and I remember when the upfronts was all about, okay, here's the fall schedule, here's what our lineup's going to be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and that was always the big thing. And obviously that's changed so much in the last 4 or 5 years. But it's made people rethink about the upfront and kind of its importance. And so someone on your side of this, what is it about the upfront that still makes it relevant?
Well, it's very funny, because I remember too, and it would be awful, right? Monday night at 8, Monday night at 9. So the great news is we don't do that anymore. But I think it comes from the consumer doesn't do it anymore, right? They're in the driver's seat. They decide when they want to watch content. It's available anytime, anywhere. I always say, screen in your hand, screen in your lap, or screen on the wall in your home. So wherever you are, you can watch it whenever you want. But when you think about it in that way, the job of the upfront is to communicate the depth and breadth of all the content and the capabilities that you have. And marketers are looking for this incredibly actionable intel, and specifically for NBCU, safe content that is now fueled by first-party data that offers new consumer options like commerce, right? So that requires better measurement. So while the upfront has become much more sophisticated, in addition to talking about great content, it requires a discussion that is much more specific about marketers' KPIs that create this good consumer experience. But to your question about why is the upfront important, and why is it important for us to still showcase our content capabilities? And the answer is, there is still an incredible opportunity for a company like NBCUniversal to uniquely offer our clients reach that there still is no surrogate, right? So while the social platforms are important, the reach that a company like NBCUniversal can deliver to a marketer drives sales, full stop. And there really is no argument about that. I think what's important I'll give you an example about what drove, if you have the opportunity to listen to our earnings call for Peacock. I'll give you an example of something that NBCUniversal could do that almost no other company can do. And if you think about Super Bowl weekend was jammed right in the middle of the Winter Olympics. And we had the Super Bowl on Peacock. We had the Olympics on Peacock. We also, for additional audience interest, launched Marry Me, starring Jennifer Lopez. And then we said, let's take the most highly anticipated original series and launch that too for an original series on Peacock, Bel Air. So you had like this super quad of content that just propelled Peacock into a space that offered advertising opportunity that simply there's no surrogate, and it likely will not be one for quite some time. But what was really exciting about that, across all the networks of NBCUniversal, from linear to digital opportunities that we have, it was promoted everywhere. We invited our advertisers to come in and ride the wave of all that content that we have. That's what the upfront is about. It's about this scarcity of premium content where there is still no surrogate.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and now we're going to open this up to the audience for any questions that you may have for Linda. Please share any questions you have. It's in the Ask Question function that should be on the left side of your screen. And it looks like we already have one. So the first question is, when you said the right amount of ads within streaming, do you see a max amount in terms of time and frequency? Or, basically, is there a danger of oversaturating the consumer?
There absolutely is a danger of oversaturating the consumer. And the best example would be for anyone to turn on their television right now and watch linear television, right? So if you have, and I'm not exactly right, it's not consistent across every company, but if you have an average of 20 minutes of commercials an hour, you're disrespecting your customer, right? It's too much. So I would say that it's why Peacock landed where it did at 5 minutes an hour, because we built Peacock and the format of the commercial experience along with our launch sponsors. So we had such a great variety of blue chip partners who helped us survey the consumer, ask in real time what they were looking for. So how to take the power of broadcast and make it into a perfect streaming service, with the idea there were always going to be ads. And that's how we landed on 5 minutes, because we actually asked the consumer and then debated with our advertisers. So they took ownership of that. And I think in large part, that's why Peacock's been so successful.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And the next question, did the pandemic help or hurt your business? And if so, how?
Oh my goodness. First of all, it's hard to think positively in any question related that has the word pandemic in it. But I would say that I think the pandemic made us more thoughtful to our clients. It certainly broke down the barriers of legacy anything and gave us permission to move faster. And we actually took a wrecking ball to every legacy process in our company. Because consumer behavior changed. It seemed pretty lazy and awful to answer a question that you were asked, why do you do it that way, and get the dreaded answer, because that's the way we've always done it, right? And the world changed dramatically. So I would have to say we accelerated everything at NBCUniversal, but the biggest thing I'm proud of on the other side of the pandemic is that we launched Peacock on time, which turned out to be perfectly timed, because we launched in the Comcast footprint in March, and then we did a national rollout in July, and it was the perfect time to bring a new product to the marketplace.
Mm-hmm. And another question that's sort of a follow-up to that, now that the world is kind of in reopening and people are not spending as much time at home anymore, how is NBCUniversal kind of planning to stay relevant in sort of this reopening of the world, so to speak?
Oh, goodness. Plans on staying relevant. I don't know. The way I do it is every Saturday night at 11:30, I tune into SNL, and I think we have a pretty good handle on keeping our ear to the ground on the cultural conversation and zeitgeist. But that being said, we're very fortunate here at NBCUniversal, because kind of the perch at where we sit, that's standing on the shoulders of all the brands that we have. So whether it's Spanish language or English language television, right? Or being the biggest news group in the country, having the biggest news footprint. And then if you want to look across screens or genres, we have such a utility of assets that we feel really, really confident that we know where the consumer is going. So quite frankly, NBCUniversal is in full force growth mode. And I think you could see that from the partnership that we just announced between Comcast and Charter. So when we make partnerships with you referenced, whether it looks like could be considered a competitor or is it a friend, I think gone are the days of this exclusivity where companies like NBCUniversal would say, no, you can only watch This Is Us at Tuesday nights at 9 o'clock, and we're going to force you to do that. We take a totally different approach. And that's why things like the Charter and Comcast relationship emerged, because we just want to bring more good content driven by data capabilities to more consumers. Because then Comcast does well, Charter does well, but really who does the best? The marketers and the consumers, and that's the business we're in.
Okay, and we have a couple questions on. I want to touch on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the first one is, how has diversity, equity, inclusion helped your partnership business? And then the sort of follow-up is do you think that NBCUniversal does a good job of representing diverse audiences?
Well, I'll answer that. That's a big question. I think that's a lot of questions on a very important topic, and I'll do my best. I'll do my best to answer it. And I'd like to believe, and the good news is, that Comcast NBCUniversal has been in the diversity and inclusion business for quite some time, and certainly more than 2 years. And there's a variety of ways that we have demonstrated that over time, whether it has been behind the screen and in front of the screen initiatives, from internships to writers programs that we've had for a long time. And it's actually connected to your prior question about how do you stay relevant. We've known for a very long time that our content needs to look like, sound like, and be delivered to the consumers that watch it, right? And we know that it does better if they can see themselves, right? So we've been in that business for a very, very long time. And you asked a really great question, was how has it helped your partnerships? We launched a variety of programs over the last couple of years with some great partners of ours like Target, like we have with Scene in Color, and with a prolific Hollywood expert like Will Packer. So we brought content to people that they wanted, and it was made by people that look like them. And we will continue to do that across all our screens. And I think we've learned a lot because we've been very, very fortunate. Having a premium brand like Telemundo in our house for so long, and we learned a lot from those audiences and the growing needs of that audience that are in fact different than many of our other audiences. So we've been in that mode for a long time, but specifically, you asked, I don't think anyone's job is ever done, because the audiences keep changing, their needs keep changing. And I would like to believe that the best thing that we've done is listen more consistently to our consumers. And we've had a great benefit from that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I think we have time for one last audience question, and it kind of works because it will go back to our very first question, which was about Peacock. You obviously have many reasons to feel very bullish and excited about where it could go. But as you sort of think about the future of Peacock, the question from the audience is there something in Peacock that you think is missing? Is there something that you want to see like more of as the service kind of continues to grow?
Yeah, and the good news is that is planned and happening. And I think we have enough momentum right now. So if you think about it, there's 28 million monthly active accounts. There's 60 million monthly active users. 5 billion hours of content is going to be consumed, double last year. So we feel that momentum's there. I think if you pay attention to the amount of investment that Comcast has committed to Peacock, the thing I'd like more of is right on the docket for the rest of 22 and 23, and that's more content, right? So more content differentiated. Like we're all high-fiving each other around here about the incredible success of Bel Air, and we were still fiving ourselves about the success of Yellowstone. So I think those things will just continue as the audience feeds off itself. Because if you think we're only 2 years old and we're living off the hits of The Office, Yellowstone, Bel Air, when you watch Monday, May 16th, you're going to hear about a lot of the new stuff coming out that we're rolling out to the marketplace for Peacock. So it's very exciting. So I would just say more content, and that takes time. Think about it. We were out of production for, I don't know if it was 12 to 18 months because of the pandemic. So that's been frustrating, but we're excited that now it's all starting to be able to come to air.
Yeah, and guys, we have received a tremendous amount of audience questions. So apologies, we couldn't get to every single one of them on the stream, but we are definitely going to get them answered from Linda after this event, and we'll send them out to you guys. So don't worry, your questions will be answered. Linda,
yes,
thank you.
Happy to answer them. I feel like we had good momentum going too. I could have gone on for a little longer, but again, very grateful for your interest in us, and hopefully I'll be able to come back and tell you more what's going on here.
Absolutely. Linda, thank you so much for joining us. This was a real pleasure. And now we're going to end today's segment with everyone's favorite axiom, why it matters. So now I'm going to be rejoined by my Axios Pro Media Deals co-author, Carrie Flynn, and we're going to talk about, what we just saw.
Hey, Tim. Hold on. Give me two. I can hear you. Okay, I can hear you. That was so great.
Yeah.
Wow. You and Linda both had amazing energy.
Linda makes it very easy.
Well, so much was discussed in that short amount of time. I want to hear, what were you most fascinated by? Like, what surprised you most? What's your biggest takeaway from that conversation?
Yeah, I don't know if it was anything that surprised me because, I'm sure, and you can agree, I've sat through many a Linda, event, at any advertising event, she's always the headliner for NBC. And, what I thought was interesting was when it's actually one of the audience questions in terms of the pandemic, and how I love what she said, that they took a wrecking ball to sort of all the old ways they did everything. And I think just in such a broader kind of way of looking at it, I feel like, 10 years from now, when we look back at hopefully a post-COVID world, we'll think about what are some of the big changes. And I think in the media industry, I think that's going to be the massive takeaway that we're still kind of figuring out, is it changed so much of how we did things. Movies on HBO Max the same day in theaters without the pandemic, that would have never even, I feel like you would have been laughed out of the building if you had, mentioned doing that. And, but that's now shortened the window of theatrical exclusives. And I think that's just one example. I think a lot of these companies reoriented their executive structure to sort of, kind of prioritize streaming, kind of move content development in one side and a lot of the P&L on the other side. And so just, I think the way she said that was that, we just took a wrecking ball onto how we did everything. I feel like that kind of jumped out to me, because I think that gets at what a lot of companies have had to deal with and what a lot of companies have done.
Totally. Yeah, it was very dramatic, but true. Like you were saying, a lot has changed. Well, to use another axiom, I was curious your opinion on what's next. So obviously we have the upfront coming up, as Linda teased. But what do you think is next for NBCUniversal and Peacock this year?
For Peacock, she said the content, it'll be interesting to see, if they're really able to, have that, I know Bel Air's done well for them, but I'd be curious to see if they're going to have that like big, massive, I don't know, Stranger Things-esque, phenomenon. Again, they're new. It took Netflix, I don't know how many years to get to that level. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes forward. I think in terms of the upfront, as I said, they've been sort of the leaders in kind of maybe going away from Nielsen a little bit and bringing in these other measurement partners. I mean, Nielsen's been under fire from left and right, probably in a way they haven't been before, especially around the upfront season. So I'll be very interested to see, how many more of their ad deals and ad commitments that they negotiate using non-Nielsen kind of metrics. I think that'll be very interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I think we had an audience question about Nielsen, so we'll have to follow up with Linda and get more of her take on that. I don't know how much she's allowed to say, but anyway, that was great. Thank you all for joining us today. This is a lovely conversation. Like we said, we'll be sharing more insights from this in our newsletter. So
yes.
If you've already subscribed for some reason, please subscribe. AxiosPro.com immediately, or reach out to Tim and I. Just Google our names. You can find out a contact with us. And with that, I'll let y'all enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Great job, Tim.
Yep. Thanks for joining, everybody.